Aha. Hello.
Hello.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, great.
Just have to organize myself a bit.
No, please, no, lovely to see you.
How are you?
Well, thank you. Yes, a little busy, but I think that's probably true for everyone.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for doing this. It's great to have you here, but also apologies for all the confusion over the date. I had updated the schedule, but somehow it didn't get migrated. So
no worries. I know how things like this always are a bit tricky. Yeah, no, it's just, I mean, I had it on both dates in my calendar and I just thought it would be next week, but I finished the lecture. At least in Berlin, it's incredibly hot today. So I don't know how it's in London.
Yeah, very hot. We're looking at 30 degrees, I think, tomorrow.
We had, So it's around 40 minutes, maybe a bit less. So on a Friday afternoon, nobody will be worried if it's a bit shorter.
We usually get a nice group of people, you know, they are sort of colleagues, friends, interested parties. You'll recognize, I'm sure, many, if not all, their names. So it's you know, it's a friendly crowd. I think there's quite a lot of interest, I think, in your topic. So we may have more people coming in than perhaps previous weeks, but let's see. That's nice. Yeah, but that sounds great. And then, you know, we can have a few minutes after, perhaps, for questions if you're happy for that.
Yes, I'm happy.
Great.
Can I just see if the presentation works as it should?
Yes, please. The whole point. We've got
just have to see.
I won't open up the waiting room until we're ready.
Okay.
Yeah. Now I might need to give you permission to share.
Yes.
There we go. Right, try that.
What do you see my presentation now?
Nothing yet, but it sometimes takes a while to.
Ah, yeah. I try it again. Ah, yeah. Now I like this.
Ah, there we are. Lovely. Yep, perfect. That's good. And perhaps you might want to just see if it moves on. Oh, there we are. It's coming. Lovely. Yep.
Okay, it's working. Perfect. It's always so strange because you can't see it yourself the same way as everybody else.
Yeah, so there's real flaws. You think they would have worked this out by now, given they've captured the market, but yeah, it's never straightforward.
No.
No. We can leave it up if you like.
If it's fine for you, I will just leave it and then it's
sure. We can then I'll where are we? We've got 7 minutes or so. I'll give it a couple of minutes to let people just gather. Got a few people in the waiting room already, and then we'll start at 3 or 4 in your case. Yeah. Good. So are you, I mean, I can see you've got lots of projects underway, and so it's presumably a busy moment for you too.
Yeah, and I mean, we have the closing of the museum and several events before, and a lot of meetings for a future with us far, far away still. So yeah, we
and
will
when
have
hoping to reopen? It's going to be several years.
in 2037.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's 14 years of renovation.
I
And
saw
I mean,
Stefan Weber, yeah.
it might
Sorry,
be
yeah.
more.
Right.
Because we will never in time for the large future renovation projects. It's, I mean.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's an extraordinary project. I mean, it's daunting, exciting, in all sorts of ways.
Yeah. Very exhausting because it's so long, and
yes.
and it's really strange because it's planned from all the colleagues who already retired now.
Of course.
Achim Matzahn and Ralf Wartke, they were really responsible for the first concept, and then Markus Hilgert was director, and he was adding things, and now he also left, I don't know, 4 years ago or something like this, and and it's clear that all the people who are in charge now also are retired when we are reopening. So it's really that makes it really difficult to work over such a long time on a project. And I mean, the topics have changed so much in the last, let's say, 10 years, and the ideas of museums and that's, at least for me, that's a point which is really difficult, as you always have the feeling you're not updated anymore before you already opened.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's a real issue. Are you able to, as it were, sort of undo some of the decisions?
Yes, we are, but it's there are always already plans, so it's expensive to change things. And I mean, there are some decisions which really concern the buildings they are made, and that's really difficult to change something.
Of course, yes, because once the architecture is there, it becomes very expensive.
And even if the architecture is not even there, if it's really planned, it's really difficult to make changes on it, and the architects are quite powerful here.
Oh, no, that's true generally, I think, and it's often, and of course they have no interest in the objects.
No.
It's a real issue. I remember working on a big project in Abu Dhabi for years, where it was a major sort of European architectural firm, and they wanted to build a building where you couldn't see any internal doors, which for a museum is a bit of a problem. So it's always a challenge for sure. Very good. We're a couple of minutes, so I think what I'll do now is I'll let everyone in.
Yes.
And then we'll just we've got 9 people here starting, so I'll let them in, and then we can get going on time. So let me just open that up.
Good morning.
Hello, good morning or good afternoon from here. We'll just let everyone into the room and then do introductions and make a start. So I'm just waiting a few minutes as people are still coming in just before we begin. Very good. Well, we've now reached a nice audience of 20. So thank you all very much indeed for coming along this Friday from different parts of the globe. I'm delighted to welcome you all back to another of these ARWA Archaeology in Action talks, focusing, of course, very much on art history and visual studies. And I'm very pleased today that we have, in a slight change to the program as advertised on the ARWA website, but announced elsewhere, and delighted to welcome Helen Gries from the Vorderasiatisches Museum in Berlin, where she is curator for Mesopotamia. She was been curator in Berlin since 2015. Before that, she was a lecturer and researcher at the University of Munich, where she completed her PhD, focusing on the Ashur temple in Ashur. Indeed, that has been a focus for her publications. We have a publication in 2017, the Ashur temple in Ashur. And she's also published more recently a book on the Ishtar Gate of Babylon, from fragment to monument, in 2022. She's busy with several major research projects, fragile images, clay media in ancient Iran, and states of clay, integrated scientific approaches to clay bureaucratic objects from early Mesopotamia. She is a board member of the Deutsche Orientgesellschaft and also its vice secretary. So I'm thrilled that she has time to join us today to talk about this really interesting subject, focus of her own research, new approaches to multidisciplinary interpretations of ancient Western Asian glazed brick. Helen, thank you so much, and over to you.
Thank you, Paul, for the kind introduction and for inviting me to present our current research on glazed bricks in this year's ARWA Archaeology in Action lecture series on art history and visual studies. The outstanding importance of glazed bricks in ancient Western Asia can be seen, for example, in the description of the newly built palace of the Assyrian king Ashurnasirpal II from the 9th century BCE. In it, he praised himself, "I had baked bricks glazed in lapis lazuli color," or more literally translated, "I glazed bricks with lapis lazuli." This quotation also shows the emic view of glazed bricks, glazes, and glass in general. Thus, the Akkadian does not have a special term for glass. Instead, glazes were marked as stones and probably also understood as such. the fact that something is glass usually only emerges from the context and sometimes from the distinction between stone from the mountain or from the kiln, which was common especially in the 2nd millennium BCE. The technique of glazing bricks made it possible to embellish walls with lustrous waterproof surfaces, making it suitable for exterior facades exposed to the weather. However, the production of glazed bricks was very laborious and energy intensive. As a result, glazed brick decoration was reserved for official buildings such as palaces, temples, or city gates and walls. From the 2nd millennium onward, glazed bricks, in addition to wall paintings, colorful fabrics, and painted stone reliefs, contributed to the polychromy of ancient Western Asian monumental architecture. Glazed brick decorations were a crucial part of the visual culture of the Elamites, Assyrians, Manaeans, Babylonian, Achaemenids, and in some way also of the Seleucids in Western Asia in the 1st millennium BCE. Glazed bricks have been well known in the Western academic world, at least since the spectacular discovery of Persian glazed brick reliefs by Jean and Marcel de la Foix in Susa between 1884 and 1886. The no less sensational exhibition just a few years later in the Louvre further introduced them to a wider public. Nicole Chevalier's splendid contribution on the reception of the de la Foix excavation showed the influence that the glazed brick reliefs from Susa in particular had on the French public, but also beyond at the end of the 19th century. With the discovery of other glazed brick decoration, such as the glazed brick friezes in Dur-Sharrukin or the Ishtar Gate in the Processional Street in Babylon, glazed bricks found their way into the art historical canon of ancient Western Asia. The iconic reconstructions in various museums further promoted this idea and made the colorful glazed bricks decor popular with the wider public. Glazed decorative elements appeared in Egypt as well, not, however, glazed bricks. Instead, the Egyptian decorated buildings with small composite tiles of faience. Unlike the Western Asian glazed bricks, this did not represent large-scale decoration, which was part of the architecture itself. Glazed bricks, on the other hand, were found mainly in present-day Iraq and Western Iran, as well as very sporadically in northern Syria and southeastern Turkey. As such, they are a distinguishing part of the ancient Western Asian architectural decor and thus also of the visual culture of this region in the 1st millennium BCE. These have their predecessors in various other forms of ceramic architectural decor. In the gray-brown mud brick architecture of Western Asia, colorful architectural decoration has a long tradition. The oldest polychrome wall paintings date back to the early Neolithic period, like the famous examples from Jebel al-Mughar in today's Syria in the 9th millennium BCE. In addition to wall paintings in the Uruk period, colored decorative elements made of fired clay were also used as building decorations. Next to the traditional projection and recessed elements of ancient Western Asian architecture, plastic architectural decorations increasingly appeared from the early 2nd millennium onwards. Examples of this would be the road-shaped decorations emerging, which include smoothed and twisted semi-columns. Figurative brick decorations are attested for the first time in the Kassite period, translating into architecture. well-known forms of expression and motifs such as Pontius, Bullman, or Blessing Godness, as Martin Gruber could show in his work on the building decor of the second millennium BCE. Virtuous building decoration was invented in Elam in the second millennium BCE. The variety of decorations and corresponding techniques and materials in this region is outstanding. The region boasts polychrome glass tube, not plankers, figurative nails, and protomes, as well as glazed bricks, all of them either with a silicious or a clay body, and large animal figures made of glazed ceramics. The oldest dated glazed brick facade is from Susa and originates from the 12th century BCE. It probably shows the Elamite king Shishak-in-Shushinak and his wife. Besides this outstanding model silicious bricks, there are also mono and polychrome clay bricks without relief. Also, there are mentions of glazed bricks in inscriptions from the Middle Assyrian period. Glazed bricks in Assyria don't make an appearance in the archaeological record until the first millennium BCE. The oldest known glazed tiles date to the reign of Tukulti-Ninurta II and therefore to the 9th century BCE. From Salmanaser III onward, glazed brick friezes consisting of numbers matching bricks decorated Assyrian buildings. Especially from the 8th and the 7th century BCE, large friezes are known from different Assyrian sites, depicting complicated narrative scenes. In addition to the narrative scenes, geometric motifs and repetitive single motifs appear under Sargon II at the latest. The earliest evidence for glazed bricks in Babylonia can be attributed to the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal, who decorated the ziggurat in Nippur with them. Not until the reign of the late Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II were glazed bricks used there on a large scale. In addition to flat glazed bricks, plain molded bricks and late glazed molded bricks were common here. The representation also differ from the older Assyrian glazed brick facades. Thus, there are no longer narrative scenes but repetitive individual motifs and stylized floral ornaments. In contrast to Elam, only glazed mud bricks and no silicious bricks were used in Assyria and Babylonia before the Achaemenid period. Glazed brick was still an important element of the royal architecture of the Achaemenid kings, and glazed bricks were found in the principal sites of this period. Achaemenid kings utilized both silicious and clay bricks that were either glazed with or without relief or unglazed with relief. The glazed bricks from this period from Babylon correspond to those from the Persian heartland in both representation and production methods. But glazed bricks were also still used extensively in the Seleucid period at Uruk in present-day southern Iraq. In this period, glazed bricks are only known from southern Iraq and are not otherwise a component of Greek architectural decoration, suggesting that this glazed brick decor is a continuation of a local Iraqi and Western Iranian tradition. For several decades, polychromy has been a central research topic in various disciplines of Asian studies. Until recently, however, glazed bricks played a minor role in this discourse. Since the groundbreaking work on the subjects by Julian Reed, Astrid Nin, and Murray from the 1970s to the early 1990s, no extensive research on glazed bricks has appeared for a long time. This has changed in recent years, and glazed bricks have again become a focus of research. This is due partly to various newly discovered glazed brick convolutions, like, for example, the Manaean bricks from northwestern Iran, as well as similar bricks from the autonomous region of Kurdistan. From the former region, numerous glazed bricks have become known in recent decades, both from regular excavation and from illegal looting. Even if the bricks from Assyria, from northwestern Iran and the autonomous region of Kurdistan exhibit particular similar motifs, they also show clear independent cultural traits. The glazed bricks from northwestern Iran depict geometric motifs as well as a rich repertoire of figurative representations. Another example is the astonishing discovery of an early Achaemenid gateway in Tel al-Ajuri, a settlement in the Persepolis area excavated by the Iranian-Italian Joint Archaeological Mission in Fars starting in 2011. The gate was decorated with glazed bricks and reassembles the Ishtar Gate in Babylon. A further example are the numerous glazed bricks discovered during the current excavation in Tel Nabiyunis at Nineveh, which are at present being investigated as part of a dissertation at the University of Heidelberg. Scientific investigation of glazed bricks have been carried out since the beginning of the 20th century, for a long time only very sporadically due to the high costs involved. Now, more and more precise and above all, easier accessible analytical methods are available. As a result, the number of analyses has been increased significantly in recent years. In addition, digital visualization offers us completely new possibilities while contextualizing, presenting, and communicating glazed brick decoration. Based on the different methods available to us in recent years, various case studies on different aspects of glazed brick decoration have appeared or will appear shortly. In addition, multidisciplinary approaches now allow us to answer new questions. As an example for the different possibilities of interpretation, I would like to present our current project on the glazed bricks from Ashur. My colleague Anja Fügert from the German Archaeological Institute and I launched the project, the reconstruction of the glazed brick facades from Ashur in the Vorderasiatisches Museum Berlin, a short title Klassur, in 2016, which was funded by the German Research Foundation in 2018. The city Ashur was one of the capitals of the Assyrian Empire, located in present-day northern Iraq on the Tigris River, as you can see on this aerial view. During the excavation of the German Oriental Society between 1903 and 1914, the excavators found several thousand glazed bricks. This date from the 9th to the 7th century BCE. The excavators documented the facades in detail for dismantling them. They did this with written descriptions and pencil sketches, of which most were done in watercolors. Additionally, they also captured the facade in black and white and sometimes colored photographs. The sketches revealed several iconographic details which can't be made out in the photographs and provide additional information pertaining, for instance, the fitters marks and the inscriptions. The excavator sketches on site not only reveal the facade depictions, but also identify each brick with a separate number. The excavators also wrote the same numbers on the bricks themselves. These numbers, which are still mostly preserved today, allowed us to assign the bricks to the individual facades and to locate them in the wall bond. Around 3,000 glazed bricks and brick fragments from the German excavations are kept in the Vorderasiatisches Museum, the Near Eastern Museum in Berlin. Most of this poorly preserved and so far unpublished bricks originally decorated the Temple of Ashur. The temple complex of the god Ashur was the largest of the city and served as Assyria's most supreme sanctuary. It was located on a rock overlooking the Tigris River in the northeast of the city next to other public buildings. Today I will limit myself to the glazed brick facades found in situ at the Ashur temple, dating to the 8th and 7th century BCE, since at least 20 glazed brick facades were found still in situ at the sanctuary. These were located in various parts of the building and belong to different building levels. The location of the facades is marked in blue on the plan of the Ashur temple. There, the glazed brick decoration appeared exclusively in the courtyards and mainly at important gateways, emphasizing the significance. The general aims of our project are the dating and contextualization of the facades, the development of glazing technology, the iconography, the manufacturing of the bricks and the construction processes, and as a main goal, the reconstruction of the facades and their visualization. Today, I would like to give you a brief insight into the workbook, our work program, and the current status of our work. We already completed the object documentation of 3,000 glazed bricks and brick fragments last year. This means that we recorded all the physical parameters of all bricks and descriptions of the representations in a database. Furthermore, we documented the bricks photographically under both visible and UV light. We applied the procedure in a standardized form for all 3,000 bricks. Due to the poor state of preservation of the glazes, we experimented with various imaging techniques. UV photography proved to be particularly profitable since the different glazes and especially the counter lines fluorescent differently. The technique is particularly suitable for making the representations visible again, but much less for the reconstruction of the original colors. We have also documented the various markings on the bricks. On the one hand, there are the so-called fittest marks, which the brick makers applied to the top of the bricks with glaze and which originally served for the correct construction of the facades. On the bricks, however, we also find inscription, figurative stamps, and finger markings that were impressed into the moss clay before firing. The various markings allow us to draw conclusions about the manufacturing process of the glazed bricks. We adopted a general repertoire approach to focus on the practices employed in the manufacturing of the glazed bricks themselves and the construction of the facades. One of the main questions of our project is the dating of the glazed brick facades, and based on this, the question of the development of the glazed brick production in Ashur. When we started the project in 2016, we were only able to suggest dates for 3 of the facades. By evaluating and relocalizing the inscriptions, we are now able to date more than twice as many facades. This allows us to draw comprehensive conclusions about the construction process at the Ashur temple and also about the development of the glazing technology in Assyria. One of the facades in the forecourt probably dates to Sargon II, based on the glazed inscriptions. Ernst Weidner already suggested in 1926 that it was a depiction of Sargon's 8th campaign. However, only a short passage at the very beginning of the 8th campaign survives, and the authorship is not generally accepted. Nevertheless, dating to Sargon II currently seems the most convincing to us. In any case, the bricks differ somewhat from the others in the forecourt. 3 facades in the forecourt can be assigned to Tiglath-Pileser III based on the stamped brick inscription. Currently, we assume that the majority of the facades in the forecourt belong to the same construction project and were also built by Tiglath-Pileser III. The facade underwent various alterations before either Sargon II or Sennacherib covered them by raising the entire forecourt. A very poorly preserved facade from the southwest courtyard also has brick inscription from Tiglath-Pileser III. In addition, numerous fragments of glazed bricks originally composed to form large rosettes were found in the southwest courtyard. The excavators always suspected that these were from Sargon II, since they also found inscribed notes of his there. After evaluating the brick inscription, the rosettes can now be attributed with certainty to Sargon II, since several bricks bear the inscription of this ruler. Comparable rosettes are also known from Nimrod and Nineveh, but date to the 9th and 7th century BCE. After the object documentation, we first only digitally reconstructed the various facades. Here you can see a section of a facade first under visible light and then under UV light. Based on this, we have redrawn the counters of the preserved representations of all bricks. Anja Fugert then reconstructed the motifs as far as possible based on the preserved glazed remains and comparable Neo-Assyrian representation. Here she always distinguished between the preserved remains and the reconstructed part of the representations, which are marked in light gray. At least in ancient Western Asian studies, it's not common practice to reconstruct representations, so that we cannot draw on many comparisons here. However, we consider it necessary to reconstruct the representations in order to make them understandable for the viewer. In the final publication, we will therefore explain our decisions in detail and show the different possibilities of reconstruction. Hopefully, this will make the reconstructions of the facades comprehensible to the reader. In order to reconstruct the original color of the glazes, our colleague Fanny Alotto carried out various chemical analyses at the Radgen Research Laboratory of the National Museums in Berlin. I will briefly present her results in the following. One of the major issues for the assessment of the original motifs and the coloring of the Ashur bricks is the poor state of conservation. Where still present, the glazes are heavily weathered and the colors appear strongly faded to the naked eye. To highlight the original decorative features of the facade and to get a better understanding of the glazing practice in Ashur during the Neo-Assyrian period, we have conducted an analysis program based on a corpus of ancient Western Asian glazed objects from the collection of the Vorderasiatisches Museum, Berlin. It encompasses mainly glazed bricks from the Ashur temple and also a few earlier glazed bricks from Ashur, from the 9th century BCE. Additionally, we have studied a few glazed vessels from Ashur from a similar time period and glazed bricks from Babylon dating back to the early 6th century that are in a much better conservation state for comparison purposes. We have undertaken mostly non-destructive analysis, optical microscopy, X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy, and micro-Raman spectroscopy. They aim in particular at studying the coloring and opacifying agents of the glazes. Additionally, we have performed samplings on a selection of objects for the investigation of the materials under a scanning electron microscope coupled with energy dissipative X-ray spectroscopy. Here, for instance, we see a cross-section of a clay sample from Ashur. The clay is about 100 micrometers thick. As evidence under the scanning electron microscope, this material is completely weathered. That was the case for all the sampled clays of the Ashur bricks. This technique was useful to characterize precipitated phases with this dominantly weathered material, associated either to the neo-precipitation of the original components of the clays, such as pigment and emulsifiers. Fanny Alotto was thus able to discriminate at least 7 original colors that were mastered by the glazemakers from Ashur to decorate the facades of the Ashur temple. An orange, a yellow, a pale yellow with a greenish accent, a black, a white, a pale green, and one or several colors in the range of green, turquoise blue, or turquoise green. The bricks and tiles from the 9th century BCE still show unfaded black glazes colored with manganese. However, for the black glazes from the later facades, we could not identify any particular coloring oxides as responsible for the black color. These black glazes are especially heavily faded, and many counterlines are white nowadays, but were supposedly originally black. In a larger comparative study carried out with colleagues from the Louvre, we were able to prove that the copper sulfide nanoparticles and the comorph iron sulfur are probably responsible for the black coloration. Since we have already published the results of the study, I will not go further detail here. As a last working step, we will incorporate all the results of the object documentation, the evaluation of the excavated documentation, and the chemical analysis into a 3-dimensional visualization of the facade in their architectural context. The project team member, Sebastian Hageneuer, who is specialized in visualization and archaeology, is currently creating the 3D model of the Ashur temple with the glazed brick facades. As a 3D visualization is the last working step of our project and is at present still a work in progress, I can only show you some preliminary drafts today. For the visualization, we proceed as follows. First, Anja Fugert provides a reconstruction drawing with the corresponding color values, which are based on the chemical analysis as well as our macroscopic observations during the object documentation, since we could not analyze all the bricks, of course. In the second step, Sebastian Hageneuer provides them with a texture suitable for the representation of glazes. In this step, he also maintains the clear distinction between preserved areas and additions. He then inserts the various facades into the 3D model of the temple. Even though the model is not yet finished and several facades are missing, it gives you a very good spatial impression and brings to life the sensory experience that visitors of the forecourt of the Ashur temple might have had. Based on the 3D visualization, it would also be possible to create a virtual reality or an augmented reality application. This would make the decor of the Ashur temple more directly tangible for museum visitors, for example. Even though these are still ideas for the future, last year we decided to display a section of a facade combined with a graphic and an explanation of our current research in the Pergamon Museum. As the Pergamon Museum is currently undergoing renovation, we also plan to show an entire facade in the new permanent exhibition. However, due to the poor state of preservation of the bricks and their heavy weight, a permanent presentation is not so easy to realize. As part of her master thesis, Mathilde Schulte developed a concept for the permanent presentation of the glazed brick facade in its original bond. This concept takes into account conservational, ethnical, as well as curatorial requirements for the presentation of the poorly preserved and therefore very sensitive glazed bricks. The exhibition of the original bricks, as some of those representations are poorly visible, will be supplemented by the then finalized digital visualization. We hope that this will make the polychromy of the Assyrian glazed brick facades visible to museum visitors in the future. I hope that I could give you a short insight into our current work. I would like to conclude with some advertising on our own behalf. For those who do not want to wait until the reopening of the museum, there is still the possibility to see the facade from Ashur in the Pergamon Museum until October 23rd this year, before the museum then closes for several years due to the renovation. In addition, you can see the intervention filter time by the contemporary British artist Liam Gillick until mid of October. I want to thank you for your attention and look forward to answer your question.
Helen, thank you so much. That was a wonderful both overview and insight into the current research project, and of course, lots of virtual hand clapping going on, and I'm sure we're all booking our tickets to get to Berlin before the closure of the Pergamon Museum. Clearly a destination for everyone at the moment. If you wouldn't mind, then stop sharing. We'll be able to then see our audience, who I will allow to unmute themselves and start their videos. Let me make sure that that's possible. And then we can take some questions. So already Joanne, her hand raised. So please do unmute and share your screen if you wish.
Okay. It's not allowing me to turn on my camera, but I think you can hear me.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, you can hear me. Good. I wanted to tell you something. I'm afraid I can't give a footnote on this, but it's of interest to you. In particular, you. Oh, okay. I'm gonna start my video. Okay, so you can. Okay, now you can see me. This was in a class that I took more years ago than I wish to admit. A student gave a paper on the Ishtar Gate at Babylon, or I should say the gates, because you actually have a full set of unglazed brick in the same pattern underneath the glazed brick ones. And he redid the stratigraphy very carefully. He was an archaeology student. He redid the stratigraphy very carefully from the excavation reports and came to the conclusion that the glazed brick is actually Persian in date, which makes sense for all the comparisons that you drew between Achaemenid production and representation with the Babylon, those glazed brick gates.
I'm absolutely aware of this, and there was some papers in the last year, especially from the I remember from Kai Kanyut, especially connecting the Ishtar Gate in Babylon with the newly found gate in Tel al-Ajuri, and there are a few more examples, especially from Borsippa, close to Babylon. And the stratigraphy in Babylon at the Ishtar Gate is a real problem, since I mean, we can only interpret nowadays the things which were documented, and that makes the whole thing very, very difficult. Olaf Pedersen did a lot of new work on this topic. I'm still not sure what dating I believe in, and I mean, what is for sure is that the gate was still standing in the Achaemenid time, but when the so-called third phase was built, it's extremely hard to say, since the stratigraphy isn't documented so so much in detail.
Yeah, okay. I just, as I said, I wanted to tell you.
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting point. Yeah.
But I think it's interesting in terms of, to consider it, you're trying to study the development in production techniques. I think that you might think about that when you're taking a look at more detailed examination of these things, of how close is it, and dating and so forth. So I just wanted to share that with you, because I wasn't sure whether the person had ever published any of that. It happens often with student papers that they never see the light of day. So I thought I'd say something.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Very interesting indeed. Natalie May, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, hello. Oh, okay.
Hello.
It works.
Hello.
Hi. I have one remark and two questions. So I will start with remark, and then you tell me if you want to answer the question by one, or I shall ask them both at once. The remark is that it was years ago, it was Warsaw Rencounter 2014, Cintia Papi made gave a talk about her excavations in Assyria, and she spoke. They found glazed bricks there, and these were Middle Assyria. And she gave also some parallels. So there are a second millennium glazed bricks there. It's probably not the same commodities, but you better contact her, especially she's also in Berlin, about it. This is the remark. The questions are, the first one, you showed, and it's very famous, and there are more of this kind, the glazed bricks which present the whole, one brick presents the whole, so to say, picture, not a picture composited of few bricks. And I presume these are brick size, regular, so it's like, it seems to be too small for the viewers to see the details if it was decorating the facades. So do you think it is possible that this kind actually decorated some inner chambers? I don't know, it depends also on the place of find, things like that, especially since we have a tradition, ongoing tradition all over Middle East of glazed, now we call them tiles, which decorate everything and not only facades. This is the first question. And the second question, in your shim, I didn't see red, but I saw it in your reconstructions. And of course, ochre, red ochre is the most often found pigment in all over, not only in Mesopotamia. And we also have this famous drawings of the Sargon's palace with blue and red decorations, which probably, I don't remember the descriptions, but I assume they also were made of glazed bricks. So is there red actually there?
I know the material from Cintia's excavation at Charkat, no, not Charkat, Kalat, that's in Kurdistan. That was the ones I'm mentioning. To my knowledge, Cintia changed also the dating to the 8th, 9th century, and they don't have a real context there. And that were the ones I didn't show them. I put in the same line with the Manaeans. They are of course not Manaeans, but they show a lot of similarities. There is one example which is always dated to the Middle Assyrian period, and that's from Nuzi. And I'm not really sure about this brick because it has a very problematic stratigraphic context, so I don't put it into the line at the moment, since we are not sure, and it would be the only example which is could really date to the Middle Assyrian period. That's why I say there is no clear evidence for the Middle Assyrian time, for glazed bricks in the Middle Assyrian time. The question about the red, red is the most common color in wall paintings or painting at all, but it not appears in glazes normally. Then it's because it's extremely difficult to produce red glaze, and it's in larger quantities only done from the Roman time on. So in Assyrian, Babylonian, and Persian glazes, red is always missing. What we have is an orange color, which is used quite often. There was a second question on this the depiction. I call them tiles. Walter Andre did call them brick autostats. They are larger normally than a common brick with 30 to 30 centimeters. The one from the Coltini Norta. The second, I don't think it's 67 to 30 centimeters, so they are larger. And to my knowledge, none of them has a clear context so that we know which part of the building they were depicting. But I believe they had a different use than the large facades we have later. So I could imagine that they were used inside buildings, but at the moment we don't have evidence for it. So I would be careful to, Thank you. To make a clear suggestion.
Thank you again.
Sorry, Paul, I can't hear you.
That is because I've done the classic thing of muting myself. So thank you. Apologies to everyone. I was just pointing out that Rowan Fleischer has left a note in the chat saying, I did a quick search on Aurak and Nebuchadnezzar inscription listed as number 2. In column 5, lines 54 and following, he describes gates with blue bricks with dragons and bulls in Babylon, but can't say anything about the stratigraphy. So I suppose that adds to the complexity of dating the Ishtar Gate.
Yes, and to make it more complex, the description of the Ishtar Gate is completely modern, made up by the famous East India House inscription in the British Museum, but the inscription clearly says that he made the animals in blue. That, yeah, it's really complex because we have these 3 different building levels. So that could also be the second building level and not the more famous one, which is reconstructed in Berlin, or parts of it are reconstructed in Berlin.
Very good, thank you so much. Are there any other questions for Helen? If not, I will just say, well, let me, before I give my thanks to her, just a reminder about next week's talk, which of course is same place, same time, and it will be given by Glynis Maynard from the University of Cambridge, who will be talking on dismantling hierarchical models in Neo-Assyrian visual culture. So I hope many of you will be able to join us for that. But in the meantime, Helen, thank you so much for this hugely stimulating talk. So many angles that are being now revealed, but also, of course, so many interesting questions still to pursue. So we look forward to reading about that and hearing more from you in the future. Lots of virtual thanking going on, well deserved. So my thanks to you indeed for today, and thanks to everybody for attending. But for the moment, thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Great. I think we're all but there. So again, just many thanks indeed for doing this. It really was terrific talk. Thank you. It's so many interesting angles.
Yeah, I hope it was okay for. I wasn't sure how the audience is, and yeah. So
yeah, no, perfect. I mean, really, you know, it's all so much new material, and a great range. Clearly, the audience, you know, wide-ranging in terms of their interests, but highest number I think we've had to date. So a lot of interest.
Friday afternoon is probably not the most popular.
Yeah, that was the slot we were given.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Anyway, very grateful indeed, and great to see you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Catch up soon.
Have a nice evening, and I hope we will meet in person and soon.
As I say, I will try and get to Berlin before before you shut everything down.
Yes, just call or write me, and because the museum is very crowded at the moment, I can let you in. And yeah, no, it would be nice to see you in person again. I think it was Chicago when we met the last time.
It was, which was pre-pandemic. So
pre-pandemic. Okay, then have a nice evening, and
thank you.
Hopefully see you soon in Berlin. Bye.
Take care. Bye.